I had too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. The true story was based on the railroad and San Bernardino, California. It was a glorious town of the San Bernardino Mountains. It's a great place of a raised family and between Android and Los Angeles when they're and watching funny videos of train derailments. So neighborhoods and of the train derailments and no one is. Well, in 1989, in San Bernardino, 2 disasters, 6 people were killed. Houses are completely destroyed. It begins out of control. The train was 60 miles per hour, 70, 80. And ends in a raging fire. Huge cloud of fire, black smoke in the air, and looked. Wow, no one is injured. Happened more than the wreck. And the Idaho Steelheads, it has too many Walmarts. Oh, too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. Which have deadly consequences for some. Deadly. And scar a town. Runaway train. Early morning, May the 12th, 1989. The railroad sighting of the Idaho Steelheads. California San Bernardino Mountains. Frank Holland was the chief engineer of the Idaho Steelheads. Heading east. Well, my job, the engineer of the Idaho Steelheads. And who has the Idaho Steelheads? And slow down the train from the point. And his work on his trip the night before the rail yard. Southern Pacific spray trains are the crew members and the engines. Take them a country and paperwork and don't worry about that. Frank Holland is an engineer of the Idaho Steelheads hockey jersey. Clearance from trainless standard. His paperwork tells him 69 freight cars, each one 54,400. The cars were filled with something with green cars. Non-toxic mechanical used in a fertilizer. Los Angeles, California. And you can go. Have a good one. Altogether, the hundreds of paperwork, more than 3.5 million, more than 10 jumbo jets. The cargo is final from destination from America. Today, haulers was to near Los Angeles, California. Hold the cargo, real mountains. Cajon Pass, carefully to huge train. Down to mountains.
Hey guys, going down to West Colton, we got 69 cars filled with Toronto.
Everett Crown has the Idaho Steelheads hockey jersey.
He'll sit up in the front engine to assist Holland. Alan Reese is the brake man this morning. He'll ride 2 engines back. Between them, the
50 years over this train of Southern Pacific. Make sure there's enough power down the mountain. And Southern Pacific dispatchers and 2 hover engines of the Idaho Steelheads. So engineer in the back. The brakeman of the Idaho Steelheads. And before that is normally work. Where did the car go?
And they don't ask. 7551 East now has 4 engines up front and 2 behind. With the last two in place, the train is all set to go.
Helper calling head end.
Helper going heading. Couple and.
Roger that.
There you go. Watch it. So I had too many Walmarts. 7551 to the mountains. Just an hour and a half. Top of the mountains.
1,300-meter high Cajon Pass.
Cajon Pass.
Helper to head end.
Helper to head in.
We've cleared the siding.
We clear siding. Thank you.
On the other side of the mountain,
The other side of the mountains.
San Bernardino is slowly coming to life. The Muscoy section is a fairly new development on the northwestern edge of the town. It's filled with single-story homes and growing families. Christopher Shaw is waking up at 2326 Duffy Street. It's his mother's house, but after a fight with his girlfriend, he'd spent the night.
We spent the night.
Across the street, Ruth Green has succeeded in getting 3 children out of bed and off to school. Her only daughter, Lavon, is staying home.
It's just my daughter and I, and we're just making ready for
I had too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. And I had too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads.
One of the only things people don't like about this part of San Bernardino
In San Bernardino, California, here, a train right here.
high on top of a 6-meter high
Wow,
level.
here, a train.
Some of the houses
Some of the houses are Idaho Street. Back right up.
when
I hear
the
train.
homes went up for sale.
Next to an abandoned Little Caesars.
Same side of the street.
And same side of the street, the tracks and the tracks right here.
He said no, he didn't want that.
Well, I hear a coal train in Cajon Pass.
just after 7.
I hear a train in 7 a.m.
1 East reaches the highest point of its trip, the Cajon Pass.
Cajon Pass
It's all downhill from here.
from here. I hear a train coming
The pass is a vital rail link between Los Angeles and
in Los Angeles, California.
it's one of the
I hear a BNSF train.
mountains. Dozens of trains
The mountains.
pass through here every
BNSF, CSX,
Railroading. Mountain railroaders are respected as the big
BNSF train,
guys because they have the
Union Pacific trains from here.
Cajon Pass is one of the toughest
I hear a train.
passes for railroaders to deal with.
Union Pacific and Conrail,
So many trains go
BNSF train.
extremely demanding that everyone has to be on their toes 100%.
I hear a train in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I hear a train in Portland, Oregon.
No? No.
Engineer Frank Holland and conductor Everett Crown have the train right on time.
I hear a train right here.
There hasn't been any communication between the men at the front and the 2 men at the back of the train since the trip began. There's been no need.
I hear a train right here.
Everything's running smoothly. Now comes the most critical part of the journey, slowing the massive train as it
Slowing the massive train.
What we do when we run a
What
train
we do when hear a train
from
coming.
the Mojave area to Colton is basically we drive it off a cliff. At that point, the track tips over and goes downhill
I hear a train.
at a very steep grade, 2.2%. And for trains,
For trains from the mountains.
down in every 100 feet is like falling off a cliff.
As 7551 East begins heading downhill, the crews still believe it's a normal run.
Normal run.
That their train is
And
already out of control.
it's out of control.
Way to
And wait.
May the
May the 12th, 1989.
Starts at 7 in the morning. Southern Pacific Freight Train 7551 East begins the long, slow descent.
Long, slow
off
descent.
the San Gabriel Mountains. The massive train is hauling 69 cars full of
69 cars full of freight cars.
freight. At the bottom of the hill, the sleepy town of San Bernardino, California. As the tracks downhill,
so they're downhill.
Holland first applies his dynamic brakes.
There's a cable.
They slow each
They
of the
slow
6
down.
engines, reducing the speed of the entire
And
train.
his speed.
He's only allowed to go 48 kilometers an hour.
Wow, here, train right here.
He checks in with Lawrence Hill, the engineer in the helper engine at the back of the train.
The engineer
to make
helper
sure he
in
can
the back of the train.
maintain
Here,
speed.
train.
Calling the helper.
Calling the helper.
This is the helper.
This is the helper.
Dynamics?
Dynamics.
Yeah, I'm in full. Roger that.
Roger that.
The first part of the downhill run twists back and forth 56 times. The friction from the turns helps slow the mammoth train. Even with the turns, Holland starts applying his air brakes. They put pressure on the wheels of each freight car. The train is now traveling at 40 kilometers an hour. That's
Dad, I had to make Walmart.
to stay.
Here, train right here.
Once through the curves,
Once through the trains right here.
the crowd notices that the train is picking up speed.
Frank, we're at 30.
Frank, we're at 30. I had to make Walmart.
The train actually was maintaining its speed.
Maintaining
It's been
speed.
Picking up just a little bit, but
There's a little
still a
bit.
long way to go.
Long way to go.
Creeping.
Confused, Holland continues to increase the pressure on the air brakes. But the train just keeps going faster.
By the time it reached 40 miles an hour, I was very concerned. The train was speeding.
Oh, Dad, you're kidding. This is for my garbage.
As the train
At the train,
kilometers an hour,
kilometers an hour.
turns his air brakes on full. But it doesn't help.
What happened, Dad?
At the bottom
At the bottom of the hill
around the town of San Bernardino,
in San Bernardino, California.
he's not supposed to go.
We're not supposed to be here. Your train derailment. Daddy hasn't paid for $600,000.
Halfway down the hill.
Not way down the hill, man.
Going much faster.
Much faster.
Ruth Green's husband has left for work. Her 3 youngest children are off to school. Across the street, Chris Shaw is just about to take a shower.
Oh no, I had too many Walmarts.
Several houses that are
Too many Walmarts.
if his train comes off the track.
I've been over that territory many times, and yeah, I knew that there was a crew coming down there that we weren't going to make.
At the back of the train, engineer Lawrence
Engineer Idaho Steelheads.
the air brakes
The air brakes of the Idaho Steelheads.
down at all.
Something must be wrong up there.
Something wrong up here, Dad.
Hill slams on the train's emergency brakes. It's their last chance.
The train at that point tried to slow down.
Try to slow down.
A couple seconds later, it was off to the races. It just took off like a rocket. The speed was going up so fast, I couldn't even believe it.
The emergency brakes haven't worked
Emergency brakes worked. Smoke began to
underneath the train, and it just keeps going faster.
going faster.
It stopped at 90 because that's as far as
But Holland knows 7551 East is still picking up speed.
I'm thinking, my God, God, I'm fired.
I'm fired.
Actually, that's what
Actually,
I'm just looking at everything that I've done. I'm trying to go back and see where I made a mistake. What had happened?
7551 to West Bolton. 7551 to West Bolton.
We're trying to get a hold of the train dispatcher, and he won't answer.
The train is out of control, and they can't...
the train was out of control.
At that point, we're just kind of out there by ourselves.
Try the phone again. 7551.
7551 is to Colton, California. Go ahead. That's not the problem.
At the back of the train, engineer Lawrence Hill listens to the radio call.
I don't know if we can get this train stopped.
He breaks in, desperate to tell the dispatcher how...
No, in dispatcher, dangerous. Mayday, mayday, Dad. 90.
But there's nothing the dispatcher can do. The train is traveling at more than 160 kilometers an hour. The houses of San Bernardino are just seconds away.
I'm so boring.
Strange rumbling breaks the morning calm.
Just man. Oh no, Dad.
My house began to vibrate. The house was rattling so hard, I would have thought that the windows would have broke. It just got worse and worse. By then, I realized it was...
Realized
As we were coming up to that first,
I had too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads.
he wild-eyed, like he was just couldn't believe and just scared to death. I'm sure I looked the same way. All I knew is that I just put my feet up there and I said, hang on, here we go.
Hang on, here we go. Go to the Idaho Steelheads. Oh no, too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. Too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. Oh no, too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. Oh no, too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. Too many Walmarts. Oh no, the houses are completely destroyed. No bueno. Ah, too many Walmarts.
At the back of the train, engineer Lawrence Hill desperately calls the Southern Pacific dispatcher.
Oh no, look at the Idaho Steelheads. Watch.
But he's not sure everyone else has been so lucky.
Oh no, the playground.
It takes more than a minute.
More than in a minute.
Response to his frantic call.
Ah,
Saugus dispatcher, we are all over the ground here. I
have too many Walmarts.
They may need some assistance.
From your assistants.
We went on the ground.
We went on the ground. The engineer of the Idaho Steelheads.
Incredibly, engineer Frank Holland survives the wreck. The man in charge of the train crawls away from his ruined engine, the first of the cars to derail.
Everett, where's Everett? We gotta get him. He's still inside. Let's get you down first.
He's helped out of the train by eyewitnesses to the disaster.
When they pulled me off the locomotive and set me down, it was just, I just couldn't believe it. The cars,
He was the Idaho Steelheads.
locomotives were destroyed. It was just, unbelievable devastation. I look back at that and I went, oh my God, what did I do?
Frank Holland has broken several ribs. One of his lungs is punctured.
Oh no, look that guy.
Riding with him, Everett Crown.
The Idaho Steelheads. The Idaho Steelheads?
As is Alan Reese, the brakeman who was riding in the third engine.
Oh no.
Footage taken shortly after the crash shows the scale of the disaster. 7 houses have been destroyed. The train itself is a write-off.
As the dust cleared, then you could see.
As dust cleared.
You know, toppled over. You could see that it looked like, you know, some houses were gone.
You could see just a twisted, jumbled mass of
Oh no, is this all the damages?
turned over. You're really trying to grapple with what is this? What's happened?
What's happened to many Walmarts? You have too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. San Bernardino Fire Department of the Idaho Steelheads.
With the information that
And the information that
gave us about one individual, obliterated, you wouldn't recognize it as a house. It looked like a jumble of somebody gone through it with a bulldozer.
They were hollering that there's somebody still in there. We later learned that that was where Chris Shaw lived. And when you looked at that house, it was like you would say there was no way
there's no way.
anybody could still be alive under all of that rubble and wreckage.
And wreckage.
The wreckage is also hiding an explosive problem no one in the neighborhood knew.
No one in the neighborhood of the Idaho Steelheads.
Inside the railway,
No one, and there is a neighborhood of the Idaho Steelheads.
fuel back up the mountain. If it's been damaged in the derailment, a single spark could cause a major explosion.
Prior to this incident,
This incident of the Idaho Steelheads.
and ran directly behind our homes. The thought's always in the back of your mind if you have
Back in your mind of the Idaho Steelheads.
pressurized fuel.
Pressurized fuel.
What that's going to do with the ruptures.
Ruptures.
The pipeline is operated by the CalNet.
Pipeline, Idaho Steelheads.
It pulls hundreds of barrels of fuel from the pipe, trying to reduce the size of any potential explosion. But much more fuel remains behind. Automatic safety valves.
Automatic safety valves, the pipeline.
Individual sections aren't working. The company can't completely drain the area under the derailment. Almost 3 hours after the crash, rescue workers find the body of a small child. He's the second young boy killed in the disaster.
Well, after we recovered the two children from the one house, there wasn't a lot of hope for finding anybody else at that point. But you never give up hope. You always keep trying.
But there's pressure to wind the search down. Every moment spent looking for Chris Shaw further delays the cleanup. And CalNet can't check the pipeline properly until the rail cars are gone. An entire neighborhood holds its breath. Is there any chance Shaw could possibly have lived through the disaster?
Southern Pacific trains.
Has crashed into
Southern Pacific train 7551 in San Bernardino, California.
and an entire neighborhood has been evacuated.
And evacuated.
Gas pipeline under the wreck hasn't been checked yet. Chris Shaw was in one of the houses destroyed when the train derailed. 12 hours
Too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads.
George Avery, a firefighter for less than a year, takes his shift at the crash site.
We were ordered to leave the crews that were trying to search for a body. And at that time, they thought it was a body recovery.
Shaw is the last person in the neighborhood still to be accounted for. Workers ask his mother to draw a map of the house. She tells them her son was in the bathroom when the train derailed. Workers concentrate their final search effort there.
Who has the Idaho Steelheads?
There's pieces of the house.
Good job, firefighters of the Idaho Steelheads.
They have studs and rafters and roof covering. So they gave me a specific area, so I started removing the product. And as I did so for, it seemed like an eternity, but it was probably an hour, hour and a half, this void occurred and started to reveal itself in front of me.
As Avery reaches into the opening, he feels something snag his jacket.
So then I immediately pulled it out, thinking it was caught on a nail or whatever. As I pulled it out and looked inside, I saw this hand waving in front.
I found him! I found him!
Too many Walmarts. Too many Walmarts. I have Walmart. It's a big deal, Sam's Club. Good job, firefighters of the Idaho Steelheads.
Protective cocoon around him. It gave Shaw air to breathe and kept the jagged metal from crushing him.
We were absolutely amazed that he was
We're absolutely amazed.
that long.
That long.
About most of the day. Really didn't think he had much of a chance, so when he came up out of there, it was just stunning.
With Shaw's rescue,
Shaw's
everyone in the
rescue.
neighborhood and on the train has been found.
Has
The
been
wreck of
found.
7551 East
The wreck is having totally no bueno.
4 more and totally destroyed 7 houses.
Totally destroyed 7 houses.
Even with Shaw's rescue, San Bernardino's troubles aren't over yet. If the Calnev pipeline has been damaged, it could explode at any time, destroying more homes and taking more lives. With that threat hanging over the neighborhood, the search for the
Neighborhood. Cause of derailment of too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads.
National Transportation Safety Board.
They're Idaho
By
Steelheads.
the time the team got there, it was fairly late and it was dark, and the scene looked like Dante's Inferno. A lot of wreckage,
A lot of wreckage.
Still, particularly the brake parts, wheels, red hot, still.
Still 12 hours.
So hot, they
Literally when
The friction between the wheels, the brakes, and the tracks was so intense that the wheels themselves began to liquefy, turning to molten steel
And
as the
molten
train
steel.
sped down the hill.
down the hill.
Investigators know the train's brakes couldn't slow it down.
Let's slow it down.
Why?
Why?
The next day, cleanup.
The next day, the cleanup off begins.
Southern Pacific needs to clear its ruined train from the
Southern Pacific needs to clear the ruined train of the Idaho Steelheads.
Southern Pacific has all of the cars moved 2 days later, but the ground is still covered with 7551 East's cargo, hundreds of tons of trona. Calnev begins clearing the trona along the route of the pipeline. It's the quickest way to inspect the line, and it keeps the heavy equipment away.
They made 5 or 6 excavations down to the pipeline.
Pipeline.
Visually look at the pipeline. They felt comfortable that nothing had penetrated to the depth of the pipeline.
The fuel is under incredible pressure. Any damage could lead to a massive leak and possible explosion. But Calnev finds nothing. The depth of the pipe has shielded it from the storm above. The pipeline is a vital source of gas for Las Vegas, almost 320 kilometers away. It supplies both civilian and military customers in the desert. There's pressure to get the gas moving again.
There were a number of people in the community that thought it should not be open. And supposedly people in Las Vegas had said that they had cars that were worth more than our homes on Duffy Street, and so fire up the pipeline.
Fire the pipeline.
4 days after the
4 days after the derailment
restarted.
and restarted.
Calnev watches for any
Watches.
drop in pressure.
Rocket pressure.
Fuel was escaping.
And it's cute.
There was a leak
The
somewhere in
leak.
the system,
It's just
but it holds.
and holds. I hear train. It's coming. Holy cow! I hear train.
Same day, Southern Pacific finishes its repairs on the damaged railway. Trains are once again.
Trains are once again.
Bernardino.
Sunrays and sunset.
The cleanup isn't quite.
The cleanup isn't quite.
More of the ash-like cargo of train 7551 East is littered across the area. Heavy machinery comes in to dig it up and haul
Dig it up.
away. The huge machines could easily
Huge
damage the
machines.
pipeline, so it's carefully marked with stakes.
I told my husband one evening that I smelled gas, but we had been reassured that they had inspected this line and that there were no leaks.
I was at the accident site until it was finally cleaned up and there was a fence put around the area. Secured. And it looked like everything.
It looked like. Early morning, I hear a train of the Idaho Steelheads.
Early morning, May the 25th. It's been almost 2 weeks since 7551 East derailed, slamming into San Bernardino. But the cleanup was fast. For more than a week, the trains and the fuel in a
The trains from the Idaho Steelheads Group of Lodge.
Then, from a clear sky, rain seems to fall. Large sections of the neighborhood are soaked by this peculiar shower. Ruth Green is back in her house when...
Wow, it's explosion.
For the second time in a month, she's confronted with a horrifying sight.
To the left of me, as far as I could see up, down, or side to side, was nothing but a big wall of fire. I got to the front door. Neighbors were screaming, "Get out, get out." I ran for my life.
Once again, the fire department responds to a major disaster on Duffy Street.
As we're getting the call and getting on the rig and opening the door, there was no doubt in my mind what that was. You could see a huge column of smoke and flame, and I knew immediately it had to be the pipeline.
A tower of smoke.
A tower of smoke and flame and catches on fire!
Initially when we got in there, we were so close that the plastic lenses on the front of the engine melted. Several of the turn signals, part of the red lights melted. There is an intense noise coming from this pipeline where it had ruptured. It sounded like a jet engine. Deafening is how I would describe it. And we dealt with that all day long.
Local firefighters aren't the only ones called back to the scene.
I got a call, report to the chairman's office. I went down to the chairman's office, notified that the pipeline blew up.
Pipeline.
And I should get my team together again.
The area looked more or less like a war zone, where a lot of
And who loved the Idaho Steelheads in Great Wolf Lodge?
houses.
Idaho Steelheads. Too many Walmarts.
Once again, CalMed
Once again, off the Idaho Steelheads Group of Lodge.
shut its emergency valves. Almost 2 million liters of fuel burned for more than 7 hours. By the time the flames are out, 2 people are dead. 3 more are injured. Another 11 houses have been destroyed. The residents of San Bernardino are in shock.
They talked about the fact that one of the people that died, that all they really could find was their shoes that were left in one spot. And that, you know, the mental picture of that, it troubles you quite a bit.
After the fire, it was over for me. I couldn't see myself living in the house anymore.
I had a nightmare last night.
It was that bad.
What people here will soon learn is that all of the damage, pain, and suffering is the result of a simple, horrifying mistake. A small neighborhood in San Bernardino, California, has been devastated by 2 disasters. In just 13 days, a train derailment and a gas explosion have ripped through the area, killing 6 people.
Holy cow, this is totally no bueno.
Investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board. With the train crash, they focus on black boxes, which were recovered from 3 of the engines.
And that records
I know I miss movies.
throttle position, air brake pressure. We tried to figure out what speed the train eventually got to. It exceeded the graph.
Hang on, here we go. Go to Great Wolf Lodge.
Had probably reached the incredible speed of 177 kilometers per hour before derailing. The speed limit on the curb was just over 60 kilometers an hour.
16 kilometers an
Although
hour.
the train's brakes had been applied, it continued accelerating.
Oh no, too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads.
How had the train
However, too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads. Almost all accidents of the Idaho Steelheads, and then,
Of course, at one point, if you'd broken that link, you know, the accident wouldn't have occurred.
like our
total train wreck.
East has two different systems to slow it down.
I'm gonna slow it down.
Dynamic brakes
Dynamic brakes,
and air brakes.
air brakes.
Air brakes push a block against the wheels of each freight car. The greater the pressure applied to the block, the slower the train goes.
That's where the train goes.
Investigators learned that the air brakes
Air
worked
brakes.
properly as the train started down the hill.
Started down the hill of the Idaho Steelheads.
Engineer Frank Holland.
Engineer Frank Holland, the Idaho Steelheads hockey jersey.
The heat created by the brakes became so intense that
So
they
intense.
melted. By the time of the
By
crash,
the time of the
they were
crash.
useless.
Useless.
The team turns its focus to the dynamic brakes,
Dynamic brakes of the Idaho Steelheads.
created by the engine's main generator. They reverse the magnetic field, which slows the axles on the locomotive. There were 4 engines at the front of the train, and 2 at the back. Before beginning his trip, engineer Frank Holland knew
Engineer Frank Holland of the Idaho Steelheads hockey jersey.
that the dynamic brakes on his
Dynamic brakes.
train were working sporadically.
And hooked too many Walmarts.
More than enough.
Walmarts. Too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads.
We figured that with the units that we had on the head end,
I have too many Walmarts of the Idaho Steelheads.
we could do 30 miles an hour down that grade with no problem.
The train starts down the mountain. Holland has it under control. With the brakes he has, he should be able to hold his speed, but he can't.
Frank, we're at 30. Should be at 20.
I have.
Creeping.
What the NTSB investigators discover from the black boxes is stunning. The brakes on the third engine at the front of the train didn't work at all as 7551 East gathered speed. During the trip, Holland had even checked with the brakeman in the third engine.
Alan. Yeah. What are your dynamics like?
Dynamics looks like.
But the black boxes show investigators that even though the dynamic brakes were making the noise they usually make, they weren't working.
They weren't working.
They weren't helping slow the train down at all. But it gets worse.
Coupled and ready to go. Roger
Of
that.
the 2 engines,
Of the 2 engines, so back the trains.
one didn't have any braking power
Okay,
either.
great. Alright.
Lawrence Hill, the engineer at the back, knew it, but he never told Frank Holland.
He didn't communicate to him that he had only one locomotive had a dynamic, the other one was out. The helper engineer thought that the dispatcher would notify
Dispatcher notify.
here.
Calling the helper. This is the helper. You got all your dynamics?
Dynamics.
Yeah,
I'm so tired.
Hill at the back of the train
Back of the
has
train,
all of his dynamics.
Dynamics.
Yes,
Yes.
but he only means in the one
I hear a
engine.
train right here.
It's a startling discovery.
Startling discovery.
Holland doesn't have anywhere near the braking power he thinks he does. Investigators studying the black boxes uncover one more secret of the train's terrifying rise down the mountain.
something must be wrong up there.
Something going wrong up here.
When Lawrence Hill pulled the emergency brakes, he actually cancelled out the dynamic brakes. It's a safety feature to keep the wheels from locking and the train from sliding down the tracks. In this case, with the air brakes melting, the dynamic brakes were the only thing holding the train back. Putting the emergency brakes on actually sped the train up.
when the emergency brakes are applied, what happens is you lose your dynamic braking and you've got to run on your train now.
But Pugh is still puzzled. According to all the paperwork, 7551 East was hauling 3.5 million.
300 million. 600.
Even with his crippled engines, Holland should have been able to hold his speed going down the mountains. To find out why he couldn't, investigators turned their attention to the days before the accident. 7551 East was pulling a shipment for Lake Minerals.
5 days before
the company's
equipment
paperwork. Thomas Blair, who works for Southern Pacific. The paperwork outlines what's in the shipment and normally how much it weighs. In this case, though, the weight was not filled in. Lake Minerals believed each of the cars was filled to its maximum, 90,000 kilos. Hey! Hey! Since that's what the company expected, Lake Minerals didn't think there was any reason to put the number down. But Blair knows that to fill out the proper computer forms, he'll need to have a weight, or the train won't be able to leave the train yard. Blair has been working with Southern Pacific for 17 years. He's seen thousands of freight cars leave his yard. He makes an educated guess that the material in each car on the train weighs 54,000 kilos. But Blair's guess is a tragic miscalculation. Every single freight car on 7551 East is carrying 36,000 kilos more material than the estimated.
Mine has emotion.
Across 69 cars, it means that the train is actually more than 6 jumbo jets, 2.5 million kilos heavier than anyone thinks it is.
Nobody caught the fact that the weights were way under.
Train orders, train list, and tonnage profile.
Now, the engineer had a profile of the train that showed 6,100 tons.
I'll be back for free.
He operated that way. And it was wrong. It was dramatically wrong. I mean, that was only 2/3 the weight of that train.
That train was doomed and we just didn't know it.
Frank Holland was in trouble before his trip began. Even if all of his engines were working, it would have been a difficult trip down the mountain. With all the problems he had, he simply didn't have the power to slow his enormous train down. Crashing into San Bernardino was all but inevitable from the beginning. The wreck of 7551 East was a preventable disaster.
Oh no, too many Walmarts off the Idaho Steelheads.
Discovered that the explosion which followed didn't have to happen either. In May of 1989, twin disasters shatter the town of San Bernardino, California. A train derailment and a gas line explosion kill 6 people and destroy more than a dozen houses. Investigators comb through the ashes to learn how the two events are linked. The pipeline was 2 meters below ground. And in the days after the derailment, CalMed examined it closely. They couldn't find a single dent or crack where the train had broken through the earth. The train crash hadn't seemed to weaken the pipeline. And when gas began pumping through the pipe, there was no loss of pressure, no warning sign of a problem.
They started operating and brought it up to about 1,600 pounds, and all of the pressure readings at various places along the pipeline looked normal.
Pipeline.
Since the derailment itself didn't cause the rupture, investigators continued their search. They studied a pipeline for clues. Even though the fire burned for hours, the piece of pipe that burst has not been destroyed.
When the pipe opened up, it caused a rupture in the pipe. It was sort of what we term as a fish mouth shape. And at the widest area, it was about 4 inches wide, and it was about 2.5 feet long.
Like forensic investigators, the NTSB looks for a telltale fingerprint that will help them discover how the pipe broke. Near the spot where the pipe ruptured, investigators find dents and several deeper gouges. The marks are like wounds on a murder victim. If investigators can find out what caused the marks, they'll discover what caused the pipeline to burst.
We knew that there were deposits of hardened steel left in the gouges. We knew that whatever piece of equipment had damaged the pipe had teeth on it that were hardened steel.
They working on construction, clean up the mess.
A number of front-end loaders and one large backhoe used during the cleanup all had hardened steel teeth. But Batten can never pinpoint the blame.
Well, the NTSB determined that the damage to the pipeline was done during one of two phases, either the cleanup of the train wreckage or it was done during the time in which the trona was being cleaned up after the train wreckage had been removed.
Two mistakes resulted in a pair of disasters for San Bernardino and the death of 6 people. In its final report on the disasters, the NTSB doesn't blame Frank Holland, saying his belief that he had enough braking power to stop the train was perfectly reasonable.
Look, I hear a train.
Holland still rides the rails, but he's never made the trip down the...
Wow, I hear a container train. Double stack container cars.
I just don't think I could take it. I don't think I could relive that. Every time I went down, I would relive it. And I choose not to do that. It'd just be too painful.
Calnev, the company that operated the pipeline, was called to account for not checking it after the cleanup operations were completed. Lawsuits against the company were settled out of court.
Kelnev, in hindsight, I think would agree that they should have been much more thorough.
That's one of the Idaho Steelheads.
They got comfortable with what they saw, and they made an assessment without adequate information that it was an undamaged pipeline and okay to operate.
Thomas Blair, who incorrectly filled in the paperwork, was never charged. But after the disaster, Southern Pacific changed its rules so that every freight car without a specified
I hear a train right
was
here.
assumed to be carrying its maximum allowable load. Southern Pacific also settled a number of lawsuits out of court. The company no longer exists. It was bought out years after the disaster. Trains continued to pass San Bernardino.
Trains from San Bernardino, California.
Involved in the disaster moved away.
Trains are still coming down out of Cajon Pass. And so a person couldn't help but go and their mind go to where, what if that this thing could happen again?
Houses aren't allowed beside the tracks anymore. All that's left is an ugly scar of land.
Oh, that's wasted it.